Good morning, everyone. Are you hearing me? Yes? Okay. So I'm happy I'm the last lecture because I guess you're all happy to be finishing. Like the professor said, my name is Yasmin, Dal릴la AMRI. I'm the ambassador of Rwanda in Korea. I've been here for 3 years. Before being here, I was in the United Arab Emirates. I spent there 4 or 5 years. And before that, I was working in Rwanda. And like some of you, I've studied outside Rwanda. So I can only imagine the excitement when you're finishing the course. I remember being a good feeling. In Rwanda, I worked in public sector, but also in private sector. So my experience is diverse. I'm happy to see that my brothers and sisters from Rwanda. So today, as I present, I hope they can present with me. What I don't know, they will help me to answer. So the way I wanted to do it, I know sometimes people present and they ask questions after. It's okay? I can remove? Oh, perfect. So maybe what I would propose to you is that it's more of a discussion. So as I present, if there is anything, please stop me. Please ask me the questions you want to ask. Don't necessarily wait, because sometimes you wait and then you don't remember. Or you're too tired at the end and you just want to leave. So my point is not to go through the entire presentation. My point is that whatever we discuss is meaningful and interesting to you. So please do not worry, just stop me and ask if there is any question. So today I had planned to try to talk about Rwanda, but to first show you the place.
Rwanda, a land of 1,000 rolling hills and eternal...
Sorry.
At the heart of Africa lies Rwanda, a land of 1,000 rolling hills and eternal spring. As we deal with the tragic history, our nation continues to grow and transcend the odds. Just a 2-hour drive from Kigali city, we have the Volcanoes National Park located in the north of the country, and it is one of our famous tourism destinations, and also one of the oldest parks in Africa, established in 1925. The well-protected Volcanoes National Park makes the northern province mountainous in nature, keeping the climate cool, temperate, and equally endowed with rich fertile soils at the foothills of the volcanoes. This fact has enabled farmers to sustainably grow Irish potatoes and pyrethrum. In the southern western part of Rwanda is Nyungwe National Park. It is Africa's and largest protected mountain rainforests, flourishing beyond the Ice Age, which explains its diversity. This rainforest blesses the southwestern part of Rwanda with favorable weather for tea farming. In the western province, you will see distinct meandering roads and eye-catching scenery of steep slopes wearing land terraces. Terracing preserves the rich soils from erosion a factor that has enabled the clear waters of Lake Kivu creating a breeding territory for the fishing communities, making way for day and night fishing, a trend that is steadily rising along the Kivu Belt districts. The eastern province is distinct from the lush hillsides. It is a province of plains. It is the home to Akagera National Park, a park that is central to Africa's largest protected wetlands. The region is a flourishing bed of horticulture farms producing colorful flowers. Endowed with numerous lakes and rivers, the dry seasons are being mitigated by promoting irrigation schemes. The average temperatures in the east rise to 20 degrees Celsius, offering an ideal climate to grow rich quality coffee. Kigali, our capital city, is the political, economical, and cultural hub that opens Rwanda to the world. It is a city now well known as one of the cleanest and safest cities globally. If you care about sustainability, visit Rwanda.
So thank you. The video, the aim of the video is just to give you a feel before we start the conversation, just to have an idea of what Rwanda looks like. But today I wanted to probably touch on a few points. Due to time, we might not touch on everything, but I was thinking to give you just a bit of a historical background so that you have an idea of what makes Rwanda a bit different. Also to discuss about the contribution of agriculture, agribusiness, and probably the challenges we face going forward. I don't know if someone is a bit better than me. I'm not figuring out where it's okay. I think touching is okay. I think I figured it out. I think it's better that I do the touch screen. It's okay. So Rwanda is we like to say that it's in the heart of Africa. We are, as you can see in the middle, we have our countries at the borders. We share borders with Tanzania, Burundi, Uganda, to name a few. We are quite small in terms of the other countries on the continent. We have 26,000 kilometers approximately, with a population of 12.4 million. We have a presidential system with two chambers, the Senate and the Parliament, as the legislative. Our national language is Kinyarwanda, so we all speak Kinyarwanda. Pretty much like in Korea, we have one language that is shared by everyone. But we have several official languages that we use for work purposes in public and private sector. So of course we have Swahili, which is the regional language in East Africa and several other countries in Africa. We speak French and also English. So depending on the people you will meet, they will be speaking several of those languages. And the idea behind it is really to be able to connect with the rest of the world and contribute as much as we can, and also learn as much as we can. In terms of capita, we have 820 USD per capita. We've been growing at a rate of 7%. We had a dip, of course, during COVID, but we are seeing an interesting recovery trend right now. In terms of the currency is the Rwandan franc, close to the exchange rate you would see for Korean won, plus and minus. In terms of the rating, we are B+ stable. So before maybe go into it, I guess because you're in agriculture, I would give a bit more of the idea of how it seemed. The reason of the video was to also show you a bit of the ecosystems that we have. We have several different ecosystems, but we would say that it's a tropical climate, and what really makes it specific is the hillside. So usually we talk about the land of 1,000 hills, because indeed it is really hilly. Not necessarily always a high altitude, but very hilly. And this has, of course, it can make it beautiful, but it also gives a set of challenges when it comes to development. What makes also Rwanda maybe different, or not necessarily different, but particular, is our history. When we look at it, Rwanda, we would say that it's quite a young country. We were unfortunate to have a history that led to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. And this had an incredible impact on the society, on the country, on the economy, and this I would say that probably we totally started from scratch in 1994. And those consequences have impact on the rural development, because like many countries, the rural side is the majority of the country. We have the capital city and secondary cities, but the majority of the people are living outside the capital city. So these are just a few of the consequences of the genocide, the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. There were more than 1 million victims. There was, of course, when you talk about victims, it means that they are perpetrators, and therefore it creates the very big challenge of justice. How do you render justice? How do you bring back a cohesion in the society? Because you can't really talk about rural development if the society on those hills cannot live together. The particularity of that genocide is that it's a genocide that was led by the government and the armed forces, but it was mainly perpetrated by the citizens. So by the end of the genocide, you are having on people outside the country where you have victims living with perpetrators. So as a government, it is very difficult in that case to implement pretty much anything because your society is crushed. So there was a need to figure out how to fix the fundamental, and the fundamental is the society. So as we had victims, we also ended up having more than like thousands and thousands of people in prison and others that were suspected on the hills. So in order to move on, we worked on different formulas, and we ended up coming up with what we call at home homegrown solutions, which we took inspiration of our culture, what Rwandans used to do before, and we took also international best practices to try to figure out how to get the society to try to move on together and more over to be united. So one issue was to find justice so that people can move on, and we used what we call gacaca. Gacaca is traditional court, which it's a collective justice model. So you would go on the hills, and we would go in an area, and we would ask the people that are known for their virtues, so being righteous, being fair, that the entire community really respects their opinion. They know that they're going to be just, and they would be like a form of a jury, and they will then access the cases. This was fundamental because it allowed us, like you can see in this point, it allowed us to try almost 2 million cases, which was extremely important. It is not all, but it was critical that at least there is a sense of justice for people. And it was also an opportunity for people to come forward with the truth. Because when you have a disaster of that scale, it is also very hard because you don't know many things that has happened, either because you were yourself running for your own life, or you were not there, and then you are in need of the truth. And the truth is critical. I think this has happened in other countries. I think even in South Africa it was called Truth and Reconciliation, because truth is really very important for the individual and the community. So this was essential in restoring the fabric. It also enabled people to ask for forgiveness, some others to give the forgiveness when they felt they were able to. So it was really restorative, and I would say helped us in our journey to unity. The other homegrown solution that was critical is what we called Ndi Umunyarwanda, which means I am Rwandan, because it was for the Rwandans involved, but also the next generations, not to necessarily describe or identify themselves in the past. And that was really formative, because we went back to who we are fundamentally as our values, and not the actions of people in our families or the people in our communities. So this really helped to cement a national identity with core values that were shared with everyone. In terms of, because of the events, people really lost faith in government and all the other authorities, because they were part of participating, organizing, planning the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So it was also important to put back the trust and to put the confidence in the citizens. And Umushyikirano is what we call the national dialogue, I think in English, where every civil servant, the cabinet, comes and presents their activities and what they have achieved to the population. And this is done on radio, on TV, online, and actually the citizens are able to ask questions. So for public servant, I think it's very much an accountability tool, because it really puts us on knowing that yearly you will be assessed. And people can call from wherever, they can ask questions online from wherever, including the diaspora. So of course, if I'm not behaving and my nationals are not happy, they can always call and complain. So I think it's very important even for us to feel that we have to not only to answer to the parliament and to the Senate, but we also have to answer to the people. And along those lines, all public servants have to be also online on social media, so that the citizens that are able to be online can also ask questions. So all these things are critical, because you need to be able to restore the trust and know as a citizen that you can put pressure on your people you've elected or people who work for you. And the two others that I would like to highlight today is Itorero, which initially was the traditional school in Rwanda. It was a school that would teach young Rwandans about the values, about the country, about its history. And we took that notion and modernized it. And it's also something that young Rwandans go through, which is important for cultural values and patriotism. And Umuganda, this is a activity that we try to do even outside Rwanda, where once per month we all do participate in an activity that builds our community. So the last Saturday of the month, I will go out in my neighborhood and participate in whatever project we have. Sometimes it's cleaning, sometimes it's infrastructure support, just to mitigate resource challenges we have at local level, where we can all pitch in without necessarily waiting for resources. So these are just kind of the point that we felt that when we executed it, it enabled us to create the foundation that then puts a possible development program, even a possibility for each and every Rwandan. So after that, we felt that the journey might have been long, because it's been now 28 years. Quite challenging, to be honest, but we saw some interesting results, and we try to keep that in mind when it becomes a bit harder. So we've been growing quite fast. We've been seeing also very high improvement in terms of human development. In Rwanda, people are quite young, like in many countries in the global south. So 70% of our population is under 30. And we feel that it's important, because of that population, to also bear in mind the challenges that most of us have, which is how will they find a job. So it's important in that case to also build the business environment that enables that. And we've put a lot of effort in building the security and the business-friendly environment. In terms of security, we are the fifth safest place to work in the evening. I think it's an important indicator, because it's where you see that it's not as much as a challenge to live there, and it also gives a certain comfort, even if you're not from Rwanda, to come and visit, because usually people feel like it's unsafe on the continent. It's business friendly. We try to, as much as possible, really reduce the bureaucracy, and we really use IT to do that. And Korea has been a great partner in those regard. In our e-government system, Korea has played also an important role. And now today, I would say that the majority of the services at local government level, but also for businesses, are able to be done online. So it makes it much, much easier to do business. And we are seeing now the consequences, because not only does it make it easier, but it also helps us because it's a key tool when it comes to curbing like corruption and other challenges. In terms of course, as a woman ambassador, I'm quite happy that we have the most women in parliament. And I'm happy that the students from Rwanda, there was a lady. If there was not, it would have been a bit awkward. So I'm very happy that today, at least, I'm not uncomfortable. Well, it's important. We feel it's important. I might be biased, but I think we are all agreeing that if a country the country residents and citizens can contribute 100%, you will move faster. So the participation of women beyond the idea of maybe philosophical points, it's also critical for the development that everyone can pitch in and everyone can contribute. So we are quite happy of these achievements of having the majority of women. It doesn't have to be the majority, but it has to be a participation that is also relevant. And it's the same at cabinet, depending on times. Ministers will usually be that way. And luckily enough, the young people also are represented as well. So you will have, I'm not sure I comply in the young category, but usually at government level, you will also find a lot of young people. And it's very important because it enables changes. Young people are more open to change, and I think it's very important, because in a room when you have young people, you do feel a lot of pressure, because when you don't want to change, they come up with all kind of options and you feel very embarrassed and you change. So I think that is also something that has been very helpful for us as a country. Like I said, Korea has been a main partner when it comes to IT, not only in the software side of things, but also in the infrastructure, where we collaborated with KT to roll out our fiber optic broadband, and now we have 95% of coverage for 4G LTE, which is quite also supportive because we can access. Well, it doesn't, I think there is still a lot of challenges there, but at least it gives us foundation to be able to project ourselves in the challenges that we have abroad. Well, I talked about this. Just for us to set, I gave an idea of where we are today, but our real objective is that in 2035 we're a middle income country. It's not a small ambition, but we think we can do it. I think we can challenge ourselves and our population to get there. I think the young people can drive this, and if all is in place, we can reach high income by 2050. This is more of a testament of how with the people you can really achieve good things. We don't have the health infrastructure that we wish. We are still have to build a stronger health infrastructure. But during COVID, we realized that you can as well use innovation to be able to curb such a pandemic. And as much as our health structure was not, we didn't feel was able to sustain if the pandemic was really to go full blast, we did feel that we could at least control the prevention side of things. And we believe we did quite well because we were able to be ranked 6th globally when it came to managing COVID-19. Right now, we hope that it continues. We are able to we see a dip in the cases. We for now, I think a couple of months, we have been able to work without a mask. It doesn't mean, of course, that there is zero case, but the cases are extremely low, and we hope that it follows. Also, the population being quite young has been also helpful because we didn't have as much casualties as well. I talked about corruption. Let me just maybe jump these slides. If we have time, we can go back to it. So maybe let's talk more about when it comes to agriculture and to what it means in the country. So the size, like I said, is we have 26,000, a size of 26,000 kilometers, and a population of 12.4. So that means quite a high density population. We have almost 412 inhabitants per kilometers, which is quite high. And all this is on hilly sites. So if you look at the agriculture, it employs more than 66% of the people in the country. So that means a lot of people on a very small size superficie. The consequences, like we were talking about, is that our size, the area people use to farm are extremely small. More than 80% of the people are farming below 1 hectare size plots. And all this is done for 70% on the hillside or the top side. So only 30% are doing it on flat land. So that brings into a series of questions. So one, how do how do you use that space? What is the productivity? Which is, of course, the biggest problem. Second of all, when we talk about productivity, we talk about, of course, irrigation. How do you irrigate such a landscape? And third of all, when you talk about mechanization, what makes sense? What type of equipment makes sense for such an area? And of course, what means equipment means a lot of money, but it also means what equipment is sustainable. Because you can buy the good equipment, but you're all more aware than I do. Then comes the issue of the spare parts, of the maintenance, and all these kind of things. So it is quite a challenge, because like many countries of the global south, we have the advantage of the temperature, we have the advantage of the soil, we can pretty much grow many things, but how do you enable an industry that is giving jobs to 64 people to contribute more than 26% of the GDP? And we've done several things with our Korean partners, but it's also a conversation that we've decided to also put at the center of the national agenda. So here are the few things that we do, and I'm sure many of your countries do the same, is to enable, have an environment that is kind of productive and able to be responsive with our institutions. Technological upgrade, that's what I've been talking about. Many things of the infrastructure, government takes it over because our citizens are not able to invest that much. So we try to have them, of course, get together and try to access, give them the infrastructure that they need, but also access to finance and other things. Skill development has been really at the center. We are trying to upgrade our skills when it comes to vocational trainings. We've worked on it, especially here, our mission here in Korea, a lot with Korea, because there's a lot of experience to learn here. And it's in the field of capacity building, but it's also in the field of R&D, trying to figure out the solutions that will make sense for us, learning from the Korean experience. Productivity and stability, I talked about it, and inclusive markets and off-market opportunities. So when we try to double-click on the question of enabling environment, in the case of when we looked at the situation of having a lot of young people, we also wanted the entrepreneurial spirit to increase so that a certain amount of people could actually work in the agriculture sector. Of course, it's always a challenge to make it attractive for young people to do that. But we believe that private investment, supporting private investment, can be a way towards that. Increase farmers' access to finance. That is, of course, that idea of putting them together so that they also can access different supports, and enhancing responsiveness of the institution. For the demand-driven research and technology, through innovative projects, that is also what I talked about when it comes to mechanization. We're also trying we have like TVET school we work with here in Korea that are strong in that area, but we're also doing R&D, and we hope to be able to even have an investor that actually produces the equipment in Rwanda, because then they can really customize. Because when we talk to producers here, they all talk about the cost of customization and the fact that it's really difficult to do it and to do the maintenance from far. So we see the need, and they see the need for the ones who have already had experience on the continent, and we want to try to do it locally. We have some engagements, and we hope it will be productive. I think, yes, for the productivity, there is series of points we will discuss later, but of course it includes climate smart practices, climate resilience ideas, land consolidation, new seedings, and improved breeds for livestock. For inclusive markets, of course, we have to increase competitiveness and post-harvest management. This is for domestic, but also for export. In our case, with Korea, we export tea, coffee, and roses. And we do find that these are really bottlenecks when it comes to exporting. We also export chili in the region, red chili, but mainly in China. We are not yet able to export it here. But we really see that we have to do a lot when it comes to our competitiveness. And we have to make sure we support with proper, not only mechanization, but post-harvest management for our citizens as well. So I think we are all following the COP27 issues, and we are all more than aware of the impact of climate. So irrigation is one, we were actually talking about it earlier, is one of the elements we put a lot of effort, because right now on the flatlands we are trying and we're seeing good results, but we are struggling on the hilly side of the country. Small-scale irrigation is an option. We looked in, and so far we have achieved 62% of what we had set ourselves in our national strategy. So of course we did radical terraces. I think my colleagues can give more examples, but also this has helped. And when it comes to agriculture productivity, here are the 3 pillars. When it comes to seeds, we've been trying to use hybrid seeds. We've been also looking at planting materials in the areas for Irish potatoes and cassava. We are cooperating with regional seed company to produce seeds locally. This was successful this year. Establish accredited seed inspection. Korea also is helping when it comes to training in those fields, and also distribution systems. Mechanization, I think I talked about it. The only maybe point is to the mobilization. We've seen a good intake for people that are more or less ready to take it, but only when, of course, it's customized enough for them to make sense on how to use it and keep it. Fertilizers is a very big issue, I think, now more than ever. The fertilizers supply chain has been disrupted, and Rwanda is, of course, struggling as much, but initially the idea was to engage, of course, some other diversification options where we can work with other fertilizer supplier. But it doesn't remove that private facilities to produce blended fertilizers we're looking to. Extension services are important. In 2010, when we started the mechanization journey, we also, I don't know the exact name in English, is it Village Mechanization Service Centers in English, would we call it that? Where it's basically, right now I think there are the number of 12, where at a specific region you can go there and there is a minimum of tools, equipment that you can access even as a citizen. You can also have private sector companies that will have their tools that you can rent. For animal productivity, really it has been about breeding, veterinary services, again has been tried to be delocalized. That's the idea of having those service center closer to people, R&D on genetic improvement, and promotional of small stocks. Government supports, of course, poultry, farmers, hatcheries. I think this is very common in the global south. I think we've been doing the same as everyone, but trying to learn by doing a lot of study visit in areas on the continent as well. And we are trying to build more freeze rooms and extend the warehouse, which has been a big issue in our case. And also because of the cost of the energy, it creates an extra challenge on running them. Government support on rehabilitation and establishment of new infrastructure in aquaculture and fisheries. This is something also that we see a lot of potential, even in terms of the national, but also exporting outside. We've seen some very interesting investments of Korean private companies in Africa in that domain, and we also try hard as a mission to interest them so they can come. I think, of course, there is some great examples in cases like in Senegal, if I'm not mistaken, with Dongguan doing quite an amazing job there. We also have government giving a lot of support for equipment, the same as they do for agriculture. In terms of feeding, I don't know if my colleagues have more experience in that one, and if they want to pitch in, but it's also an area where we put a lot of effort, and we are trying to government to invest with the private sector for production of animal feeds. So the strategic ideas are pretty much very similar. Is how do we get production inside? Of course, we understand that this will take some time, and the time as we do this, we try to build the skills at different level, at vocational training level, and also, of course, at a more strategic level, with Korea working very much with us when it comes to programs like these ones. So financing is is always the conversation. So we have the financing part, and of course you have the de-risking part. The particularity in Korea is that you have the experience of Korea, but you also have multilaterals that work here that are very helpful. And one of the ones that has helped us also when it comes to this risking is the Green Climate Fund, the GCF, that is hosted in Songdo. And they really help us on projects that involved climate resilience and agriculture projects that are climate resilience. So for financing agriculture, I would say that is more increasing access to finance and hoping to achieve 10.4% increase by 2024, and to make sure that we really come out of the situation we're in, where it's really quite low with a 5.25% of loans. Promoting contract farming, this has been done by government quite a lot. I would say that even chili is one of the crops that is really benefiting from that. And the Ministry of Agriculture working on pathways on other outside options like the GCF that I'm talking about with the Rwandan Green Fund. De-risking is important when it comes to livestock. So we've seen private sector support when it came to livestock insurance. Some are done by private sectors. We have companies that do that for small and medium, large farms, but we also, government also pitch in when it comes to cattle, piggery, and poultry. The same for agriculture. So digitalization is something we've been also trying to do. We have one product that is called Isoko, Soko meaning market in Kinyarwanda. And the idea is to be able to cut as much the impact on the middleman when it comes to information. So every farmer is able to have on a daily or whenever per request get the exact series of data, and that can be the prices on the market, that can be even other information depending on what is being posted on it. There is also a common data warehouse that hosted all the digital data. that is hosted by the ministry, that the ministry has developed, the Agricultural Land Information System, but also Management Information System. And this really allows to have information about pretty much any area, any place. When you have the number, the plot number, you just put the plot number and it comes out. And it also gives the farmer all kind of support in terms of data, but it also helps our planning and our strategy. So in terms of crop production, when we take a bit before COVID, because I guess with COVID we are working more on quarterly based data now. So we can see that there was an annual increase of 4.3% on food crop production. This had direct and positive implication of food security. So that we can see that on the past 10 years, or more than 10 years, we've been able to move from 66% to 81%. In terms of livestock production, a good example is the meat production. It has, I would say, six-fold increase we are seeing from 2006 to 2020. And in terms, not on production, but on consumption, it has tripled it, which is a very good sign. So if we when we look at the impact, we really see the way it's so related, so correlated with the reduction of poverty, which really show our dependency, but really show the urgency in our case to really move really forward with what we are doing now and probably increase the pace so that we see the change we want to see. As you can see, the numbers I said, we can see that both are really on the same trends, being from the agriculture side. For the export revenue, we see pretty much see that before COVID we could see a slowdown of the exports, and this was mainly due to the change on the international market, and this was also a wake-up call for us on trying to diversify what we are doing in that area, where because of our dependency on tea and coffee, we are seeing that when it's heat, we cannot really control or mitigate as much as we want. So this was also a wake-up call on trying to diversify what we are focusing on. And though we see a good intake in terms of the other sectors, but the exports is playing the majority of the role. So we are trying to look into more products that we would look at that has more potential. And as you can see, this is the last is where we see quite a lot of potential, which is cashew nuts, avocado as a superfood that is really upcoming. Dairy is a big one. Essential oils is also something we've been able to increase. And with the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement, we think that things like essential oils could be produced completely locally. I think when we did the exercise as a team, we could realize that if you look at the East African part, we do have all it takes to do it locally. Because some countries that are able to produce the equipment, the others have the spices, the other have the oil. So we could actually leverage the Africa Free Trade Agreement to be a hub. And I think in the case of a country like Korea, then it makes even more business sense, because you can ally the K-beauty experience with essential oils and be able to do a set of products that would be a great collaboration between a Korean company and a company that is leveraging the Africa Free Trade Agreement anywhere in the region. And this can be applied to other products like honey or pyrethrum as well. So as you could see, these are the different elements in terms of agribusiness that we've been moving. When I see tea and coffee, as you can see, are the biggest in agribusiness, then it's followed by rice, wheat and palm oil. Okay, so when we talk about the best practice, in our cases, what we felt worked quite well was the sector coordination. This was very important. It really helped us to be more efficient and to be able to implement in a better way and probably get feedback quite fast. This was very helpful. We did the sector working groups and joint sector review, which would make it more efficient and more comprehensive. Evidence-based policy, of course, so all our national policies are now really pretty much entailed and in sync. Crop intensification program with really the land consolidation has been helpful, though of course it still has challenges of how the best model of making people work in cooperative, as sometimes we still see quite some high failures. Livestock intensification program, and also the 1 cow per poor family. So what happens is that we, as a government, to try to provide an increase in milk consumption and production for a certain level of the population, the most vulnerable, they would receive 1 cow, which would be like a capital they can build up. And we could see it really change the life of the household, who can either use it or even sell it and get some revenue. And it did change the landscape of at least the most vulnerable being able to get a minimum. Kitchen gardens in household also has been very good in terms of harnessing the nutritional benefits, and also the National Strategic Food Reserve, which has been growing and giving us more food security as a whole. The challenges, like I said throughout the presentation, is the size of the agriculture parcels, the low productivity, the yield is very low, the land topography, the climate shocks that we are all experiencing, and more experiencing even in the global south, the post-harvest losses because we don't have the right infrastructure for it, disease control, that is very important, skill gaps of small-scale farmers. We try our best, but there is still a lot of room for improvement. Access to finance, access to quality farm inputs, because we rely on imports, and now we all see what is the consequences. And low uptake of modern technology, where we have to increase on marketing, and the low value addition to agriculture produce. So I would say that in general, this is where we stand. I do feel that we've done good, but this is critical for us to also succeed our integration. The Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement is a very, very important element, because it will allow us to exchange pretty much like ASEAN already does, or the EU does. And we feel that as Rwanda, we should have a place or a role to play, but for that we need to basically fix our internal challenges. So I think maybe I can pause there and see if there is any question. I think the time has left. Actually, it's finished, so I think I would maybe stop there. Thank you.
Actually, we are running out of time.
Sorry, I'm very sorry. I've just realized that I went totally.
Thank you for your privilege.
Thank you.
And then there's 1 or 2 questions, please. You gave us a lecture precisely, so no question. Okay.
Or maybe can I ask a question?
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay. So I like the diversity of the group, and I don't know who will accept to answer. But from your experience, I see many people are not from Korea. What is the biggest thing did you feel that you would learn from Korea? I'm stealing your very intelligent brains for free, so it's consultancy that I'm taking from you guys for free. What is from your experience, having experience home and comparing to what you've seen here, what did you feel was the one takeaway that was the most important of the program?
Maybe second batch chair? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Lekon.
You want the mic? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. My name is Lekon Olanio, and I'm from Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And I'm second batch for the KOICA SP. Mm-hmm. And we really appreciate your invitation and also your wonderful presentation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, based on your question, one good thing I'm taking back to my country, Nigeria, is about the salmon udon agricultural program that actually helped Korea to develop from where they were after the war with North Korea and making them what they have right now in agriculture. Well, we have something similar to in Nigeria, but of course everything needs improvement and development, and this is the spirit of everybody coming together to develop their society or their nation. So I think that is one of the main things for Nigeria and for other African countries. If we all can come together as one, seeing ourselves as brothers and sisters, helping ourselves to achieve a common goal of developing our society, I believe we are going to be great, just like other nations in the world. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Oh, it's good. It's more than...
Neighbor country.
Yes.
Thank you. As Professor introduced me, my name is Tanko from Tanzania. Okay. Oh, yeah. Many things we learned, but in a brief for myself, I've been much interested with the cooperative structure. Cooperative structure which is operated in Korea. The integration of different components in cooperative, I think, can be one also important thing to cope with in some of the many African countries, because I've seen like cooperative, Korea is having a small end of production also, but through cooperative has integrated many things which is lead to productivity and self-food sufficient. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nice, okay. I appreciate the inputs. Thank you.
Okay, one more. Where is Solomon? Solomon? He's hiding? Other neighboring country. Yeah, Uganda.
Actually, I just appreciate. I appreciate Rwanda because we have a lot to learn from Rwanda. In terms of development, they are moving very fast. I've been in Kigali before. It is an example of a very clean city where by all African countries should you emulate. But as far as agricultural development, we all have learned that developed countries had to strengthen their agriculture sector in order to take off. But when you look at our governments, they want to develop the country, but are not investing in the agriculture sector. As a leader, what advice would you give us? Because for us, we are technocrats. When we travel to such countries, we learn a lot. in terms of technology, and even we copy some policies which can help our countries. But leadership is still a challenge in order to kickstart or to develop the agriculture sector. With your experience here and in leadership, what can we do for the development of our countries? Because even when we are learning here, lecturers and our professors have always told us, we've shared experience. Even when they are not making profits in their production, they continue to invest in the sector, which is opposite to our African countries, our governments. So with your experience, what can we do? Thank you very much.
Yes. Please. So yeah. So maybe just to close it, it's hard to tell you what to. It is very hard to say what you have to do. But I believe that we are doing it. I think sometimes we feel we are not doing it because it takes time. I think now we are in Korea. We come when it's done. But I think the generations that worked on it didn't feel it was coming as fast as it should. So I think when you're in the process, you feel you're not doing it. But I think the hardest thing is to continue and to persevere to do it. Because I think when you're doing it, you give up. Like you say, some leaders will not do good, some leaders will do better. But in reality, it's the perseverance that the overall effort you've put in then gives a positive result. So you guys coming here and sacrificing this amount of time, you could be with your families, you could be in doing your work as usual, but you sacrifice to upgrade yourself and come back home. That's a perseverance. Is you not giving up and continuing and going home and continuing. So I would not know the result because we talked about Rwanda, but we are in the process. But I believe from what I've seen the very few years, I've seen is that perseverance. Because every time we would start a project, and I don't know about my colleagues, you will be like, this is impossible. But when you persevere, before you know it, when you arrive at the 60%, then you're like, okay, so then that's possible. And because you are the 60%, then you have the excitement. And then when people come, they say, oh, you did it, and now you also look like it was easy. You say, oh yeah, it's not easy, but it's actually very hard. So I think the perseverance is that. And the perseverance of feeling that Africa is not moving, I'm not sure about that. I think we have highs and we have lows. And sometimes the lows are bad, but we have highs. But the highs we have, we don't talk about it or we don't hear about it. But we have a lot of highs. And I think it's important for the people on the ground from the technocrat, because you see what is not going well, don't give up on fixing it. Continue to fix it. Of course, in a team of 10, maybe 4 are not very productive, 2 are probably not doing anything. But if you don't persevere, then you cannot bridge the gap. If you don't arrive to the 60%, then we will not see that change. So I think that is what is very important. Even as a technocrat, you are a leader of that group, of that department, of that place. If you don't persevere, then we will always have another low. And the point of persevering is to reduce as much as possible the impact of the lows. But please persevere, please do not give up. Otherwise, we are going to be here in 20 years still talking about what we are not doing well. And do not look at the facts, don't look at the headlines, don't look at the people, look at the facts. Yes, we have challenges in the Global South, but a lot of great things are happening in Global South. When we are looking at, even we're talking about the Africa continental trade thing, but at the end of the day, ASEAN is the footprint. But if you're not close to Asia, you might not know that ASEAN is the footprint. You might think that maybe it's another block. So I think it's very, very important. Do not look at the laws only. Really pay attention to the facts, not the words, not the headlines, not the scandals, because those ones are just discouraging. And it's hard to be a technocrat because sometimes you feel that you don't control. But don't worry, even the leaders have a lot of pressures that sometimes, you feel like it's not necessarily. So I think Korea now, you look like it was easy, but I think it was probably the hardest. And the feeling of not controlling was probably the longest. So I think for me, persevering is the biggest advice. Thank you.
I really appreciate for your enthusiastic lectures.
Thank you very much.
Ooh, I'm pretty much impressed.
Thank you.
But the only thing that I'm disappointed is this morning, early in the morning, I took a bath and haircut to Rwanda. I'm early enough.
Don't worry, in my country, me too, I leave that one every day. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you very much and give a